Hello, Internet, and welcome to 56th episode of the Deep Fried Neurons podcast. And today we don't have a guest. I'm so sorry for you guys that you have to bear me again. So I'm gonna make it short for you. I'm just gonna cue the fucking. What is up, kids? Good morning. It is Sunday, and I understand that we have been on an 8-day schedule of uploading, and I really apologize. I might have skipped an entire week doing one day, one day, which is not me. But like, I'll tell you why we're late this week. It's not because I'm a lazy idiot who did not edit the episode that I had. It's because the guest I had lined up for this week, I couldn't meet them this week, and because of the logistical nightmare that life in general is, I couldn't record a replacement episode for that. It's been a little bit on the toes when it comes to like meeting the guests. It's a hustle. So luckily I had content that I wrote down for a previous episode quite a long time ago, and I dismissed the idea for being cringe. But like, I'm in a state of mind right now which would accept all amounts of cringe as a good idea. So you guys are lucky that you get to put this in your cringe compilation. You've definitely read the title of the podcast or like title of the video if you are listening to this on YouTube. Um, I'm so sorry, Vishal. Oh, Vishal is sleeping, by the way. It is 8 in the morning on a Sunday, and I'm ruining his Sunday as the tradition of this house has been. um, Coming back to the title of the video or the podcast, it's why my name's Deep Fried Neurons, and um, the thought of explaining your name itself is kind of cringe. I'll be honest. Like I heard myself even imagining that, and I was like, dude, what the fuck happened to you? How did you get here? This is the lowest point in this podcast history. But at the same time, it fills at least 10 minutes of watch time, and it actually isn't that bad a story, or that bad a thing to discuss, because it's difficult to explain to people like what is the niche of this podcast, because it's not an educational podcast. We don't just do education. It's not an entertainment podcast, because god knows half of this shit isn't entertaining. um the one thing that I get to be described as the deep fried neurons is that most of the niches I touch are interesting, and that's where it goes. Like, it started as a podcast that I just found interesting, but there's always been an overlaying theme um in my mind. When I started it, I never worded it down for about, I think, 10-15 episodes. Now of course the doom videos are completely out of this niche. Everything else though is definitely inside this niche. um the podcast is definitely inside this niche. Okay, coming back to the origin thing. um well, I mean, I might have mentioned in the previous episodes. I think the episode about Diogenes of Sinope, I mentioned that I grew up in a town of some 5,000, 9,000 people. And I don't want to dox myself, as well. Why I'm not going to tell you what town it was. Um, because, well, I still live there. I mean, my parents do. So I grew up there, and I had no frame of context to what um, a city looks like or what city life is. I mean, I had an idea of what a city looks like, but my idea of what a city is was Nagpur, which is a tier 3 city in India. And I mean, for people who are from India, you would know that that's not a lot. That's like saying Minneapolis is your idea of city, or Dayton, Ohio is your idea of city for Americans. Or I've not traveled much in Europe, so I can't give you a frame of reference that's relevant to your geography. Figure it out. You know what tier 3 cities are and tier 1 cities are. I mean, luckily my parents were privileged enough to afford traveling for me and my brother and the entire family. So we traveled quite a lot. So whenever I left the house, uh, village and Nagpur in particular, the world outside seemed hostile and it seemed like something I did not belong in. It felt like a higher level battle altogether, if you know what I mean. Like, um, if there are people who've played God of War, it's like everybody you meet had a purple health bar. That's what it felt like from like where I was standing at the time. And this is me, uh, pre-adolescent. And the moment I entered into adolescence, luckily I got to travel international, and I realized that that purple health bar, ratio of that purple health bar is so much wider. And like my uncle lives in the United States and in some parts of northeast, I believe. Like, um, I'll tell you where I traveled at the time. It was at the age of 13. I traveled in New York, Philadelphia, Washington, Buffalo, New York, and the Niagara Falls. Which, I mean, sort of like I had this big moment of like, we do not know a lot about the world. Like, I do not know a lot about the world. I know about my parents. My parents probably knew about all of this. It's just they they're OP characters in their own world, is what I'm trying to tell you. Um, and after that, I think at the age of 12, 13, I found the internet and the internet culture. And I remember the initiation moment. I might have discussed this before. I'm so sorry. It was American Idiot. Like, not just the song, the album. That's where my link to the global culture sort of began. And then, like, I slowly descended into the fan clubs on Tumblr. Yeah, I know Tumblr was pretty cringe. You know what? You've heard this podcast before. You know I'm a pretty cringe human. The fact that I had a Tumblr should not bother you at all. Like, I was on Tumblr and I was checking out fan pages for Green Day, and that's exactly where my beginning started. And then after 10th grade, which is at the age of 15, I moved out of where I lived to Nagpur, which is a tier 3 city, and I thought my life would be as good as it was, as good as it can get. And this time I got more time unmonitored on the internet, which sort of let me travel far and beyond on YouTube, which is where I practically lived at the time, and ever since, to be honest. And I don't think people realize, I mean, I hope Susan realizes how much pressure she's under, because I'm not kidding. If adolescent Anuj, this is the first time I'm admitting my name, everybody else says my name all the time. If adolescent me does not find the internet, then my life does not stay the same. I do not choose the same courses in life. I'm not in the same cities. I do not meet the same people. I do not process information the same way. So internet and internet culture is consequential from that point on. I'm not that it's not consequential when I was 12. Of course, it shaped me quite a lot even then. It helped me improve my English to a very great extent. Not that my teachers didn't do a good job, but like the internet really helped shaping that. And well, that's how I that's how the internet sort of started shaping me. But eventually, when I was, I think, 16, 17, I started reading about this First World War and the Second World War. And the first thing I ever read about it was Wilfred Owen's poems and Siegfried Sassoon's poems. I don't know if you guys know about their poetry, but it's harrowing. It's about one of the Siegfried Sassoon poems is just called "Suicide in the Trenches," and it's about how a soldier he was serving with killed himself before the Germans could. uh, Papa bless me. So that's exactly what the song was about. Not the song, the poem. And during this time, I started processing more information than I realized. And um, when you're when you're a teenager, you do something cringe. You want to feel special. I, I know it's not something we want to admit, but like I feel like everybody around me at the time, and me especially, wanted to feel like such a genius. I wanted to be the first person to know something. I wanted to be the only person to know something. I wanted to be um, the know-it-all at the time, in every conversation, and it was very cringy. Like if I met me 7 years ago, I would probably slap me to the ground and then use a baseball bat on my head. Like that's how annoying I was to myself. But my self hatred on the side, I really wanted to feel special, and the internet sort of helped me keep grounded because every time you think like you found the bottom of the barrel, the internet had 2 million people, 5 million people who are already there and who already know like a lot more about it, even though that's not their area of expertise or area of work. So I started realizing that information is extremely readily available, and like unless you choose to use it very much to your benefit, uh like the world is gonna zoom past you. Like you're gonna witness your aging, and not learn enough about where you come from and where you're going. That's also something I learned by the time I finished my second year, that um, human history is awkward and absurd. So you're placed in the middle of aiming your society's aim to be immortal. That's exactly what you're doing right now. Um, the planets don't matter. I mean, not that it doesn't matter to this generation or these people, but it's just that in the long run, everything is temporary, and the only thing that human species has consistently cared about is being alive together as humans. And to be honest, sometimes, most of the times, when you read about human history, society just seems like such a bad idea. Um, but I've digressed again. When it comes to the name of deep fried neurons, eventually by the age of 21, which is finishing my college and starting working as a curator, um, information sort of took a little bit of a toll on me. Like at this point, I read things that would challenge my belief system, specifically, and I felt like it's something that people have been doing for a while, but not at the scale that it is done now. Like the internet is such a privilege in the sense that you could believe 2 plus 2 equals 4, but there is an explanation for 2 plus 2 equals lemon pie that actually makes perfect sense. And every bridge of what you held to be known sort of breaks down, and every bridge of what is knowable definitely burns down like that. I think I talked about this in MAM episode 3. Shout out to my videos that I'm proud of. You could check it out. It's in the link in the description. So, sort of, eventually processing information takes your toll on you. It's I think it's a version of sensory overload. I'm not sure if it's the same thing, but uh, a lot of people feel jarred after too much information hits them in the face, and I it sort of annoys them. So people sort of take breaks from taking information. I actively stopped myself from taking breaks eventually, and I decided that turning off your brain is not an option now. If you want to process as much as possible, and it's not like you're going to know everything ever, but what's that going to do to you is going to lead you to dissociate emotionally from everything. It's not that you're not going to feel, but you're not going to feel the motivation to act on the way you feel, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But what that means is that you've been shooting so much information at your nervous system that it's heated and fried at this point. I think I said this in a conversation to somebody, and I thought that was a very cool idea for an Instagram page. And that's how Deep Fried Neurons was born. And I was obsessed with this story that I wrote from incidents that I might have read and heard from people, and it just kept developing and like delving into philosophy, that like how, like, what information sort of um, gives this distinct feeling of a deep fried nervous system. What challenges your beliefs? What feels like it's too much to know, like, but isn't. That's sort of where my niche was. But like, of course, I'm going beyond it. The Doom videos are up here because, well, I want to have fun, and I think it's cool to have them. Um, but by the way, it's if not that you should be interested, and I'm so sorry shoving down more content down your throat, but I need watch time. I am a poor YouTube person. Um, there's a me and Bad in Bollywood, which is like good friends of mine, and people who've been featured on the channel multiple times. Did a day of just Doom arcade mode, and like we made videos about it. You could check that out. Anyway, I hope I was able to explain what deep fried neurons meant, at least as a name. It just meant that your nervous system is fried because like information is bombarded at you at a rate unknown before. Not to say that this is the worst way to get existential, or it is a bad thing at all, because the last time a generation was plunged into nihilism and was disoriented about their purpose, uh, it was a it was a it was a world war. And I think this is better than that. It's just learning about their experience. Sort of, I can sort of see how people in this century think 100 years later. Um, but even their nervous system was deep fried. It's just the way it was deep fried is a lot more intense. It is not comparable to how we are now, but you see the glimpses of it there. Like, um, basically, technology sort of pushes you into this new unexplored ground of possibility, uh, where the plane doesn't remain the same anymore, and you realize how truly chaotic the world is, and how fragile the belief system that you based your entire life upon really is, and how it should have never held up in the first place. um and well, altogether it adds up to an experience of the world where even when you're not on autopilot, uh, every incident is just processing information eventually. I don't know if I'm making sense anymore, but I feel like this is an episode I should upload. So good luck listening to this, I guess. That's it for this episode, I guess. And let me know in the comments if you cringed, uh, like if you scratted or falurad. Either way is fine. You can just let me know in the comments. And well, if you're new here, please subscribe. Not the best episode to start listening to my pod though, but um, but I mean, welcome. And well, if you think the content is worth it and you've been listening for a while, and you can spare any money, go to my Patreon. You can support us there. Like young young podcasters require slay money. And I think it's been exactly 1 year now that Nachiket Karandikar is been supporting me on Patreon, and I couldn't thank him enough. Also, thank to the other people who pay to me on PayPal. You are amazing humans, and I think there's a total of 4 of you, including Nachiket. So you guys are great. You guys keep this podcast going. You guys give me the motivation to do this all the time. The quality of the content improves because of you. And I have to say, Nachiket has been ahead of the line for so long, and he's the best person to have as a friend and as a patron. That's it. Um, I'll see you, I guess. Bye.